The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, June 24th. Our second post-OCON show and our first of the week. And well, June is almost over. We're almost in July. Time is flying by. All right. A quick reminder before we get to the news. Quick reminder, tonight, 7 p.m., Robert Bryce is going to be on. We're going to talk about all things nuclear energy, all things, maybe we'll talk some climate change, anything you want to talk about. But he is an expert. I think it was Alex has interviewed him several times on his podcast. Really good guy, really knowledgeable, and particularly nuclear energy. So with the potential changes in U.S. legislation regarding energy, should be a interesting topic of discussion. So please join me tonight, 7 p.m., right here on this channel for a discussion, conversation with Robert Bryce. And I'm not sure who we have next week, but I'm hoping that, we have every week that before I travel to Europe, that we have some new guest. I will try to make sure that happens. We'll see. All right, let's see. What do we want to do? Yes, let's jump right in. So the Supreme Court has been super busy. It's released a number of different decisions the week before last and last week. Interestingly enough, all the really big decisions, they have yet to release. So it is going to be an intense few days this week. There are 15 decisions left, including presidential immunity. January 6th, Chevron, the scope of regulatory authority of the regulators. What was the other one? Free speech, government interference with social media. These are big issues, and I don't know what the Supreme Court is thinking, but they are leaving them all to the very end. Usually, they are done with all the different decisions by July 1. I have a feeling that this year we're going to spill into July, right? Because I just don't see how they do 15 decisions, some of them big, major, with huge consequences in 5 days. I haven't seen anything today, so at least 4 days for the month. I just don't see it. So we're probably spilling into July. But anyway, in the next week or two, we should get really big consequential decisions that have a consequence on the presidential election when it comes to January 6th, but particularly when it comes to presidential immunity. Big, huge decision regarding Chevron that'll have an impact for decades to come in terms of the power of the regulatory authorities. And of course, the free speech issue, which is huge around social media. There are 2 or 3 different cases around social media that'll have an impact on Section 230 and on just the ability of the government, or the inability of the government, let's hope, to influence what social media does one way or the other. So I don't know what they're waiting for. I don't know what the delay is, but we'll have a lot to talk about this week and next, given all these decisions coming down the pipeline. Anyway, in the meantime, a few Supreme Court cases worth mentioning that were ruled last week, just because this one, for example, is a tax issue. And the only reason I bring this up is we discussed it when our arguments were being made. This is a tax case. Basically, it's a lawsuit prompted by a couple that invested $40,000 in 2006 for a 13% stake in a small company in India. They've never received any distributions, no dividends, no capital gains, and yet the IRS has required them to pay a mandatory reparations tax on their share of the company's earnings. The reparations tax is a tax passed by the Trump administration in, 2017 or 18, where to try to get companies to pay taxes in the U.S. on money they held overseas, it forced them to pay taxes on unrealized gains. Unrealized gains. This is a terrible tax. All taxes are terrible, but this particularly terrible tax. It was passed by Republicans as part of their big tax overhaul. It's a way to prevent people from, I guess, hiding investments overseas. Not hiding the investments, but not paying the taxes. Anyway, is it repatriation or reparations? It's probably repatriation. Thank you, Adam. Let me just find it. Repatriation tax. Thank you, Adam, for catching that one. On a percentage of the company's earnings. So this is an evil, bad, horrible tax that Trump put together in order to penalize companies because of overseas activities, typical of Trump. Anyway, they sued, saying that this was a violation of their constitutional rights because they were being taxed on unrealized gains, and this was a violation of the 16th Amendment, which says that the government can tax income, but this was not income. The 16th Amendment says the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, and here the argument is there's no income. There's no income. Anyway, we went through this. The government decided against the couple. They decided for the government, for the IRS. The decision was a 7-2 decision, with the only people opposing this, Neil Gorsuch and Clarence Thomas. Good for Gorsuch and Thomas, bad for the rest. So this is another one of those cases where, here's the justification. I have to read you justification because this is perfect. This is perfect. This is justification from the ruling. This was written by Brett Kavanaugh, a conservative, one of the conservative majority. Quote, and those tax provisions, if suddenly eliminated, will deprive the U.S. government and the American people of trillions of lost tax revenue. God, that is a great sentence, right? Deprive the U.S. government. Deprive them from stealing my money? Deprive them from what? Deprive them from something that they have a right to somehow? My money? Anyway, if suddenly eliminated, would deprive the U.S. government and the American people of trillions of lost tax revenue. Lost. Lost. No. If it's ruled unconstitutional, then it's not lost. It's tax revenue you never had a right to. It's, wow. And then he goes on. The logical implications of the Moore's theory would therefore require Congress to either drastically cut critical national programs, yay, or significantly increase taxes on the remaining sources available to it, including, of course, on, and this is the key, right? Including, of course, on ordinary Americans. The Constitution does not require that physical calamity. Calamity. The Constitution doesn't require that the government spend these unbelievable amounts of money that they spend today. I mean, it's just unbelievable that a Supreme Court justice in America writes a paragraph like that. Ordinary Americans. Now, the Moors who filed this lawsuit are not ordinary Americans? What constitutes ordinary Americans? Americans who don't make investments in foreign companies? What is ordinary? And how much sacrifice do ordinary Americans demand from extraordinary Americans? What is the ratio? How much sacrifice is enough? It's just disgusting. It's just, and this again, a conservative quote. It's good for Gorsuch and Thomas for standing up against this. All right, there was another case. This is a case that related to a married couple, one of whom is an American citizen, and the other one is not, and he lives in El Salvador. And they wanted to unite in America, and usually a spouse would get a visa, but here somebody at the consulate denied him a visa without providing any reason, although ultimately it came up that he suspected the guy of being part of some gang, but never provided any reason. Anyway, this went all the way to the Supreme Court with regard to what are the rights of a couple to be able to, somebody married to an American, what are the rights of somebody married to an American in terms of coming to the United States? Now, generally, this is not a particularly interesting case. I don't think there's anything really hugely at stake here, except that this was an opportunity for the Supreme Court to comment on the unenumerated constitutional rights. Remember, the Bill of Rights has enumerated rights, but the Ninth Amendment basically says, look, this document does not include all the rights Americans have, all the rights human beings have. These are just certain ones that we enumerated, and there are many other rights. And don't use this as a definitive list. This is just examples. This is just a sample, in a sense, right? That was Madison's intention, and Madison, of course, originally objected to the Bill of Rights because he feared that it would be viewed as this is it. These are the rights. There are no other rights except for this. Anyway, there's certainly in the Bill of Rights no right for somebody to come into the United States based on the fact that, so it's not enumerated. So here's Barrett, Justice Barrett, another one of the conservatives, Catholic conservatives who are on the bench. She wrote the majority opinion, which denied this person's ability to come into the United States. But that's less interesting than this sentence or this paragraph in it that I think has very, 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 very wide ramifications, including on a lot of different issues that the courts have ruled over the years. And here's the sentence. And I mean, this is where I say, and I've told you many times on the show, maybe not you specifically, but I've told people many times on the show that there is nobody on the Supreme Court, literally nobody, who actually understands what individual rights mean, right? This knowledge is just evaporated and does not exist. And in that sense, and I hate to say this because it sounds unbelievably arrogant, because the people in the Supreme Court are really, really, really smart, but they don't understand the Constitution. And because they don't understand the concept of individual rights. Here is the sentence. The argument of the plaintiff, so this is about his argument. Argument is built on the premise that the right to bring her non-citizen spouse to the United States is an unenumerated constitutional right. Here's the key. To establish this premise, she must show that the asserted right is, quote, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition. This is citing a 1997 case, Washington versus Glucksburg. So, where do rights come from? Not from the nature of man. I guess not even from God. Not from nature herself. Nature and nature's God, or however they phrased it, right? No. Rights come from history and tradition. History and tradition. So, I mean, think about that. I mean, this will upend, this has the potential, if this is taken seriously, and this is considered an important statement, this will upend gay marriage. Certainly no right to marriage in the Constitution, and gay marriage is certainly not deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition. Right to contraception. Well, right to abortion, we've already discarded. Well, there is a tradition of slavery, Jennifer, but, we have an amendment to the Constitution getting rid of that, so that's okay, right? If we didn't have that amendment, then slavery, I guess, would be okay because it's deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition. I mean, this shows, like, very few, I don't know, sentences one can cite from the Supreme Court. This shows the utter intellectual bankruptcy of the Supreme Court of the United States. And this, again, Barrett is one of the smarter ones. She's definitely smart. She's definitely not straight down the line crazy conservative. And actually, she wrote a searing critique of Thomas, which was actually pretty good, about relying too much on history and tradition. But here she is, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition. But that can't be true. And that cannot be the founders' intention. Would the founders really have thought all rights, to discover what right is, we have to go to a tradition in history? I mean, the founders were radical, revolutionaries. They were new. They didn't look to tradition and history. They looked at reality and facts and what constituted freedom and liberty. And they declared unalienable rights to man's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does the right to life mean? It means the right to freedom of action in pursuit of one's values, the values necessary for one's life. How can then, that is pretty broad. You have a right to a lot of things. And by the way, rights are not stuff that people give you. Rights are things you have the freedom to seek, to act in pursuit of. You have a right pretty much to any activity as long as it doesn't violate somebody else's rights, as long as it doesn't constitute the imposition of force or fraud on others. That is the foundation of rights. And that's what nobody on this court, nobody on any court for 100 years has understood. And that's why they can keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking the realms in which we can be free. If we understood rights properly, we'd be dramatically expanding the realms in which individuals are free. I like this. I like this statement from Bree. Bree says, the right to life means life, the pursuit of actions, pursuit of values, as long as you live according to tradition. That's good. That's good. Oh, I take a position on the Supreme Court in a heartbeat. I mean, tomorrow. Right? I wouldn't care who the president is, because in a sense you're above the president. That would be something I would definitely do. I would definitely do if anybody ever, but will never happen. So don't fear, those of you who worry about that. All right, let me quickly thank anonymous user Alex for doing a gift membership. Thank you, Alex, who benefited. Dark Brandon 46 benefited from Alex's generosity. Anonymous user, thank you. And Mary Eileen, thank you for the sticker. You too can do a sticker to help us reach our goal for the super chat today. We do have goals. We have to meet them. All right, let's see. Where else? What else do we want to talk about? Yes. I don't know if you saw this story last week again. The Louisiana legislature passed a bill signed by Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, of course, all Republicans, requiring the display of the 10 Commandments in all government schools, in all government school classrooms. So every single classroom has to have the display of the 10 Commandments. Now, I mean, this is, I think, a clear violation of the separation of church and state. This is the kind of case that could easily go to the Supreme Court if they want to redefine the separation of church and state. In the past, things like this have been ruled unconstitutional. With this court, you just don't know, because this is a court that is very conservative, and they might rule it constitutional. I just don't know. But this is what red states are doing now. They're going to push the envelope and see how far they can get. They learned from their abortion. Try again. until you get the right court who will approve it. This is what happened with abortion, and this is what's happening here. We'll see the same practice, I'm sure, with other social issues that the Republicans want to pass. I mean, for every good thing Republicans want to do, there are 10 bad things Republicans want to do, and it's just, I think Remo's right, disgusting. It's just disgusting. Remo in the chat. Civil liberties groups are suing. They're suing this in court. I assume this will be federal court. I'm not sure if this is federal court or federal court or state court. Anyway, this has a chance to get up to Supreme Court. This law will affect the 2025-26 school year. The 10 Commandments have to be displayed in a large, easily readable font in all public classrooms from kindergarten to state-funded universities. So every university has to carry the 10 Commandments. So, in other words, they're going to stick it on our face that this is a, quote, Christian country, that these are Christian values, that this is all about Christianity is going to be in our face. Sorry, the Judo-Christian tradition. I said over dinner the other night to somebody that there's no such thing as a Judo-Christian tradition, and they flipped out a little bit. They weren't happy with me. But this is a Judo-Christian. I guess the 10 Commandments are Jewish ultimately. It's one of the few things that the Christians take from the Old Testament. But I wonder how they deal with the first and second commandments. And what, those of us who are in violation of those by creating images and by not worshiping the God. I wonder what they do with that. Anyway. Here you have it. For those of you who think that the Republicans are not the party of religion, they want to remind you as often as they can. I do not approve of the 10 Commandments. I don't approve of any commandments. I'm not a slave. I'm not to be commanded. You should not be commanded. I don't approve of any commandments. Morality is not about commandments. Morality is about choices. It's about values. It's about virtues. It's about choices and actions that you take. Commandments is the opposite of morality. Commandments are something you must obey. I'm not here to obey. I don't like the 10 Commandments. Many of them happen to be true in a sense that there are things that you shouldn't do. Some of them are not. So some of them are fine in some way. But not as commandments. Some of them are fine as words of wisdom. Some of them are awful as words of wisdom. And I oppose the idea that a religious statement of commandments that you must obey out of a sense of duty, I'm against duty, to what? Be imposed on our schools. Now, of course, this is only possible because we have government schools. They shouldn't be government schools. So schools should be privatized. And not only am I against the 10 Commandments, and I am, I'm 100% against them, I'm also against government education. I'm against government schools. I'm against government funding of universities. I'm against government involvement in any form in education. All right. All right. I say oi because it's oi. I said some comments about Nigel Farage the other day, and Luke says, this is about the previous one. Luke says, Peikoff had a wonderful response to this question. I think it was about Old Testament morality or something like that on a panel that Yaron was actually on. Sadly, I don't remember that, but I'm sure it was brilliant because nobody, I mean, I don't think even Ayn Rand was quite as good at answering questions as Leonard Peikoff was. I mean, Leonard was so sharp on these questions. and so definitive. And he always got to the root, to the underlying question, to the fundamentals. He was great. So that is, I'm sure it was a great response. Yeah. All right, so I said some stuff about Nigel Farage about a week or two ago, and I was skeptical about him, and then people said, no, he's really better. He's pro-free trade. He's actually pro this stuff. And I said, okay, I'll have to look deeper into it, and I haven't yet, but maybe you guys are right. Maybe I'm being too negative about Farage, and maybe he's the best available out there. Anyway, more evidence is surfacing that maybe I wasn't harsh enough, or that maybe I wasn't that off base. So it turns out that Nigel Farage on a BBC interview a few days ago basically said the other day that at the end of the day, the war in Ukraine is the West's fault. It's NATO's fault. It's the West. That the West basically provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine because we expanded the European Union east and NATO alliance east. And then other stuff was brought up about his comments in the past about Putin. In 2014, Nigel Farage says that Putin, 2014, said that Putin was the most admired world leader. It was the world leader he most admired. And then he said, so this is the quote from the interview the other day, I said I disliked him as a person, but admire him as a political operator because he's managed to take control of running Russia. So think about that. He doesn't like him as a person. Okay, there are a lot of politicians you don't like as a person. But he admired him as a political operator. So he admired his ability to send people to the gulags. He admired his ability to control Russia as an authoritarian. He admired his ability to shut down the media, independent media. He admired his ability to almost bankrupt the Russian economy. He admired his ability to, basically siphon all the wealth of the country into the hands of a few oligarchs. Really? I mean, this is the problem with the modern right. It's the problem with the right in the US, in Europe, in England, in everywhere. They are fundamentally admirers of authoritarians, which makes them wannabe authoritarians. They are. And as much as we want to try to run away from this, as much as we want to present them in a good light because we hate the left as much as we do, and we certainly hate the left, our choice are crazy left or authoritarian right. And the crazy left is also authoritarian. But let's not pretend that the right, even if they have some good ideas, are not fundamentally authoritarian. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole spiel about why Putin started the war in Ukraine. I've done that many times. You can go check out my talk from last year's OCON about it and find all the evidence you need, including one of my shows where I go into great detail. Of citing Putin's article that he wrote about, 7-8 months before the war, where he basically, explains why he went to war, why he's going, how he views Ukraine, put it that way, not why he's going to war, because it was before, but basically his views in Ukraine, where you get full on his collectivism, his belief that Ukraine is part of Russia, and all the rest of it. So why is this not working? Something's not working here. All right. So I've done plenty on Putin in Ukraine. Those of you new to the channel, by the way, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But anyway, why is this not working? I hate it when stuff just stops working. There it is. Now it's working. All right. Putin did not invade Ukraine because of NATO. I mean, that has been debunked by me and by others many, many, many times. Putin basically, invaded Ukraine because he's a megalomaniac who believes Ukraine is part of Russia and believes in a empire and wants a Russian empire and believes the West is weak and will not support Ukraine, and Ukraine was weak and he thought he could just take it over like that. And now he's stuck with it, and he still believes that it's part of Russia and he still wants it, but he's stuck with it. So here's an interesting story. You know how we've complained about the fact that Germany has shut down its nuclear power plants, and energy prices in Germany have gone way up, and this is true all over Europe, and that they have invested heavily in wind and solar, and this is inefficient and unproductive. Well, here's an interesting story from The Economist about energy prices in Europe. So if as energy becomes more scarce, as it becomes more difficult to get energy on a consistent basis, energy prices should go up. And there's been a lot of complaining about energy prices going up, and this is a real problem, right? This is a real problem. Ukraine is not part of Russia. Ukraine's an independent country that gets to choose whether it wants to be part of NATO or part of Russia, part of the European Union. It's none of its neighbors' business what it chooses. It's a free, independent country, not part of Russia. Anyway, let's see. So you'd expect, as scarcity because of alternative energy, prices should go way up. And that's the story we keep hearing, is that prices of energy are really, really high. But here's the puzzle, if you will. Puzzle, conundrum, whatever, right? It turns out that in Spain and even in Germany, between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m., prices for energy on the wholesale market, that is between the producers of the energy and transmitting and the people who bring it to your home, prices for electricity are actually negative, or basically zero. So there's so much that they don't know what to do with it. There's so much that some producers are willing to pay others to get it off their plate, out. Now, how can that be? I mean, well, the reason is simple. Europe has invested heavily in solar panels, Spain and Germany. Now, this is particularly true of Spain, where it's very sunny, so they have a lot of these, right? Solar panels produce a huge amount of electricity for Spain. But even in Germany, which has both solar panels and wind farms, even though in Germany there's not a lot of sunshine during, I guess, the certain parts of the year where the sun does come out, when the sun does come out, which in Germany is not that often, but when it comes out, prices go zero negative. Wholesale prices in Germany were negative 301 hours out of 8,760 tradable hours last year. So not a lot, because the sun doesn't shine a lot in Germany, but some. Not a very good. Anyway, we'll get to return on investment in a minute. Now, the reason for this, of course, is when the sun shines, solar panels produce a lot of energy, particularly given the quantities of solar panels that these countries have put in place. The problem is, particularly in Germany, what happens afterwards? What happens afterwards? Like in the evening. Well, in Germany, prices spike at around 6 p.m. and they peak at around 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. They peak, and then they start declining because demand is lower after 10 p.m. because people go to sleep. I mean, sunshine also corresponds with people using air conditioning when they get home. And they put on the air conditioning, they're watching TV, they're putting on the lights, and God forbid, they're charging their electric cars. So in the evening, demand for energy spikes. They're doing their washing, dishwashers, they may be doing their laundry, so they're using laundry machines and dryers. People use more electricity in the evening and at night than they do during the day. And of course, at night, shockingly, it really is a surprising, but at night, solar panels don't produce any electricity. So suddenly at night, you have to rely on those coal and natural gas and powered systems. Now, it turns out that Spain has invested more heavily in different forms of, I guess, battery storage. So their spike in energy prices is not as high as Germany's. But notice that you have to have, if you have a huge amount of solar, you have to have backup natural gas. It's very difficult for the backup natural gas or coal or whatever it is to make money because during the day you're not using them at all. And the value of the energy they're producing is zero because you're getting the solar. This is just unbelievably disruptive and inefficient and unproductive way of allocating electricity. Now, one way you could do this, one way you could solve this problem of having excess capacity during the day is to send electricity to places that don't have surpluses. But for that, the grid would have to be better. But also, it would create an economic problem. Because by sending the surplus energy to other countries that might not have, that might be short on supply, that would then drive supply up, prices down, and the existing utility companies in those countries are going to fight you. They're going to fight you. Why? Well, because their prices are going to go down, and therefore their profits are going to go down. So, first of all, it's going to be super expensive to build out the grid, which they probably should anyway, and connect Europe better. But there's going to be a lot of opposition. All the local utilities do not want you to produce electricity and to pump it into the country to drive down prices. Now, this, for example, happened when, Sweden, I guess, was going to be connected to Germany, and the project was canceled because of fears it would raise electricity prices for domestic customers and decrease it for customers overseas, because now there's no surplus. Now, you could try to shift demand, try to get people to do their washing and laundry and do everything else, all their consumption, during the day instead of at night. You could, for example, make it illegal, I don't know, to charge your car at night and force them to charge their car during the day. You could, you could do a lot of all of these things. But to do that, the only way really to do that is to start charging people different amounts for the electricity, depending on the time of day that they used it. So imagine if you as an end user knew that any electricity used after 6 p.m. would be double the price of any electricity used before 6 p.m., you would then be incentivized to shift your consumption of electricity to earlier in the day. Problem is, that requires new metering, new, more high-tech facilities. Spain, because everything is newer in Spain, because they've only modernized recently. In Spain, they have that. So they actually have prices that adjust based on the time of day. Or they have the capacity. I don't know that they've implemented yet. In Germany, they do not. And they would have to invest in it. And you think people would like that? people might rebel. And generally, it's so perverse. Like, make it inconvenient for me. All because of mandates. Not because this has to be, but all because of mandates. So it's one thing if this is a market phenomena and therefore there's market pricing that adjusts during the day, okay. But this is completely arbitrary. This is all by fiat. This is all because of some arbitrary demand. And notice that solar panels in Germany, really? That's nuts, given how few sunny days there are in Germany. Spain, okay, you can make the argument. Germany, insane. And what about, well, Germany has windmills. Supposedly it's very windy in Germany, so they get some electricity from that. But even there, during the certain times of the year, during terms of the day when the wind is blowing, they have too much electricity. And then when the wind's not blowing, they have too little electricity. This is why Alex Epstein justifiably calls these renewable energies as unreliable. Unreliable. And that's exactly the case. They're unreliable energy sources. All right. I want to say something else about this. Oh, finally, the idea of storing batteries and stuff like that, very expensive, very difficult. You're talking about large scale. Now, there is a project somewhere where they are using the excess. Okay, here it is. Yeah, this is in Hamburg, Germany. All right, here's a let's see but this is for 20,000 households. That's all. Yes, maybe this is not Hamburg, Germany. I'm trying to remember. No, this is in Finland. Sorry, Vantaa, Finland. In Vantaa, Finland, the local energy company is about to dig a hole the size of 440 Olympic swimming pools into the bedrock beneath the town. This will be filled with water heated to 140 degrees Celsius when they have excess, right? Which will store 90 gigawatt hours of heat, an amount sufficient to keep the town toasty for a year. So you know, they're trying to build place kind of structures that can preserve. I mean, given how cheap natural gas is, given how potentially cheap nuclear is, we'll talk about that tonight with with Robert Bryce at 7 p.m. Don't forget, we've got an interview. This is insanity. Think about the waste. Think about all the stuff that's going on. That's just waste. All right, just a few updates on. We did cheap energy before the war. Okay, that's okay. A few updates on wars more broadly. A lot of speculation about when Israel will invade Lebanon to kick out Hezbollah, or at least to kick them away from the Israeli border and put a distance between them. Such a war, it cannot be limited. This really is going to involve Israel bombing Beirut. It's going to involve Israel engaging in Hezbollah with Hezbollah forces all over Lebanon. This is going to be a major event. Hard to tell how Iran, whether Iran participates or doesn't participate, whether Iran uses this opportunity to launch more missiles against Israel. It's just hard to tell exactly how this goes, but there's a lot of discussion about this happening any week now. The idea is generally that Israel is about to wrap up the major portion of the operations in Gaza. They will have gone through all of Rafah and cleared it of the main forces in Rafah within a few weeks. Now, there's still pockets of Hamas all over the Gaza Strip that are reintroduced every time Israel leaves. They'll keep having to go in, clear up a section, come back out, go in, clear up, back, in, out. That will continue. Who knows for how long? Maybe for years. But the major military operation they claim, I don't know if this is true, in Rafah will end in a few weeks, at which point Israel will have the resources and the capabilities to enter Lebanon and to take care of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is much more difficult than Hamas, partially because it is entrenched in a country whose government, military do not support Hezbollah. So this could also spark a civil war within Lebanon. And there have been a number of voices, particularly out of the Christian community in Lebanon, saying that they want Hezbollah out, that they want Hezbollah to disarm, that they do not want a war. And if this leads to war, they'll do something against. So I don't know how that will work. We will see. But there's also a news story in The Guardian over the weekend saying that Hezbollah has massive, large areas of where they store weapons inside the Beirut airport. This freaked out the authorities in Beirut because that means flying into Beirut is not safe. Airlines are now questioning whether to fly into Beirut. The Minister of Transportation immediately came out and said, no, that's a lie. There's nothing. You can come and inspect. You can come and see. Anyway, this is a real mess, and I'll have more to talk about the potential war in Lebanon in the future. War in Lebanon is something I know a little bit about, given that I actually was in the last big war in Lebanon, actually made it all the way up to Beirut, was involved in planning the war in Lebanon, was involved in the war itself, in the planning during the war, and again, I was in South Lebanon and was in Beirut for a while. So I know a little bit of what I speak. So we will talk about that more, but it does look like that is inching closer. And of course, this will be difficult primarily because Hezbollah is rumored to have about 140,000 missiles. I think it was Netanyahu, maybe it was the defense secretary, Israel's defense secretary, said also over the weekend. He said something that startled people. He said something like, if a war with Lebanon happens, and Israel is alone in this, then Israel will have to use weapons it has never used, unprecedented weapons that it has never used before. Now, a lot of people speculate that's nukes. There's no way that's nukes. I mean, stop it. That's just people fear-mongering and BSing. But it's not nukes. But it is, but who knows what it is? It could be kind of bunker-busting bombs that Israel has that nobody knows that they have. Long-range missiles, everybody knows Israel has, and it doesn't help. Lebanon is short-range. In Lebanon, everything is really close by. So it could be a weapon that is a bunker-busting weapon that nobody knows Israel has to get at the Hezbollah storage of weapons systems that are probably dug deep into the mountains or into different places. It could be some kind of electronic disruption system that disrupts drones and disrupts ballistic missiles that are electronically guided. Already Israel disrupts a GPS, but this would be something more intense and more unique that Israel has never tried before. Obviously, GPS they do all the time. It's a capacity they obviously don't want anybody to know they have, but I wouldn't be surprised if it had to do with electronic warfare and disrupting the ability of some of these missiles to actually hit Israeli targets. I don't know, but that is a part of it. All right, continuing on the war theme quickly. UNRWA is the UN refugee agency that, as we know, shields Hamas, aided Hamas, launders money for Hamas, does all these things, and whose members, UNRWA members, even participated in the October 7th massacre. UNRWA members are members of Hamas, right? UNRWA has just been sued for $1 billion of damages by 100 Israeli plaintiffs who filed the lawsuits against the United Nations Relief and Work Agency in a New York federal court. They include the survivors of October 7th massacre and relatives of victims, and they accuse UNRWA of aiding Hamas through money laundering operations that allegedly funneled over $1 billion to terrorist groups. The lawsuit claims that the UNRWA officials knowingly funded Hamas and provided evidence of UNRWA's involvement in facilitating Hamas's activities, including the construction of command and control centers and attack tunnels. The plaintiffs also allege that UNRWA employees, including teachers, were involved in acts of violence and hostage-taking during the October 7th attacks. This is great. This is a way, because the United States does not have a foreign policy or does not have a rational foreign policy, this is a way to enforce a correct policy on the United States through suing the United Nations, basically. And even though if they win, this money would ultimately come from the United States, because the United States is the major backer of the UN, it serves them right. They shouldn't be the largest financial backer of the UN. All right. Let's move quickly to Ukraine. Big story in the Wall Street Journal today about Ukraine's use of what's called Navy drones. Navy drones, my brother actually worked on the development of the first naval drones ever. Anyway, naval drones, basically using this and long-range missiles, Ukraine has basically taken over the Black Sea. So not so much taken over, but denied access to the Russian fleet over the Black Sea. Russia today basically has very few ships in the Black Sea. The Black Sea is now available for Ukraine, which means that Ukraine can export grain through the Black Sea and through Turkey and to the Mediterranean, which is huge. Ukrainian vessels are now operating free of harassment in the Black Sea, and this is all because the Ukrainian Navy has had to back off of Crimea and has had to entrench itself deep, further east from Ukraine and even all the way to the Caspian Sea to get away from both missiles and Ukrainian drones. So good for the Ukrainians, putting the Russians on their back feet and be on the defensive. And finally, talk about Russia. Another terrorist attack in Russia, probably by affiliates of ISIS. This is an attack in which 15 people were killed. Dagestan is a Muslim state within Russia. It is in the Caucasus. It's in South Russia, and they attacked both a synagogue and a church. A number of most of the dead, I think, are security personnel who try to protect these institutions. A 66-year-old Orthodox priest was also killed. As I said, police officers and security people were also killed. I didn't see that anybody was killed in the synagogue. Maybe they attacked on the wrong day for anybody to be killed inside the synagogue. But yeah, Russia still suffers from Islamic terrorism. This, of course, complicates the whole issue of Russia's relationship with Iran, Iran being the ultimate source of all this terrorism, at least in terms of inspiration. And, this complicates Russia's life. They have a large, much larger than the West, much larger than the United States, in terms of the percentage of the population, Muslim population in Russia. Basically, their south and their east have a lot of Muslims. They have Muslim migration into Russia. We saw that it was a Muslim who migrated for Tajikistan, it was Muslims from there who executed that terrorist attack on the music performance in Moscow. And this is clearly a reduction in a real problem, a real challenge for Russian authorities. And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. By the way, it turns out that some of the terrorists were fighters in the MMA. All right, just one other piece of news. This one from the UN. related, I guess, to wars. This is from the UN, that robust rights-respecting institution. It turns out that there's a conference by the UN on Afghanistan. The UN is going to have like a conference organized by the UN on Afghanistan, on the conditions in Afghanistan, what's going on in Afghanistan. And the Taliban, the rulers of Afghanistan, demanded that no women participate in the conference. No women participate in a conference on Afghanistan. And guess what the UN did? They said, sure, we don't need women. Who needs women to talk about Afghanistan? That would be wrong. Anyway, discriminating against women at the UN is fine if it's a bequest of Islamic fundamentalist nutcases. And so the UN, I mean, maybe I always said we should pack up the UN from the US and ship them to Caracas in Venezuela. But now I've changed my mind. Maybe they should go to Kandahar or to somewhere in Afghanistan. I think the UN headquarters should be moved as soon as possible to an appropriate building. No, Tehran is too nice for them. I think Kabul or Kandahar would be perfect places. No, even Pyongyang is too. I mean, the beauty of having it in Kandahar is there will be no women there. So you'll be able to have an all-male UN facility. And I think their world headquarters should be there. I'll vote for that. Move the UN to Kandahar or the Taliban. All right, I said Taliban, or Kabul or Kandahar. All right, oops. Oh, I didn't mean to close that window. Damn it. All right. Let's see, there's a way to open a window that I just closed, maybe an edit. I know there's a way to do this. I hate this. Reload, not this page. Anyway, I don't have to reload it. I know what the story is. Quickly, this is just quickly on tariffs. Trump is going around in his rallies. Trump is going around saying, people are saying Americans paid for the tariffs. The tariffs are a tax on Americans. This is a lie, he says. Tariffs are paid 100% by the Chinese. They pay the tariffs. Now, he also says that the tariffs help protect jobs in America. Now, you can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. If the tariffs were paid by the Chinese, that means that prices did not change. That basically Americans paid the same amount for the goods as they did before, and China just paid money somehow in some mysterious mechanism into the coffers of the United States government, or they just subsidized it with more money so that the companies could keep the prices low. I don't know what Trump means exactly, but that's okay because neither does Trump. And if that's the case, then the products are just still competing with American products, and therefore no jobs of Americans can be saved. Indeed, the only way that tariffs can save jobs, and even this is not true, but the only way tariffs can save jobs, is if the prices of Chinese goods in the United States go up. That increase in price is a consequence of the fact that American importers have to pay a tax on the imported goods that they brought in from China, and they pay it to the American government. And then they raise prices to compensate for that. And as a consequence of that, because Chinese goods are more expensive, Americans buy more American goods, and that's what saves jobs. You can't have it both ways. One or the other. No other way to do it. Now, even under the scenario where the price goes up, Americans pay that tax with higher prices, or the importers who are Americans pay the tax with higher prices. Even under that scenario, jobs are not saved because more jobs are destroyed than are saved. For example, on steel tariffs, which do not apply to China, by the way, they apply to Canada and Brazil and places like that. The users of steel now face higher prices, and the users of steel lay people off. So I think, I can't remember the exact number, but economic research after paper after paper after paper have shown that the Trump tariffs destroyed many, many, many more jobs. I think for every job saved in the steel manufacturing business, 4 jobs were lost in the steel using industry. And that's true with the tariffs on washing machines, and that's true in the tariffs on a bunch of other things. Who paid them exactly? Well, the only reason American washing machines became more popular in the US is because foreign washing machines went up in price, and they went up in price because tariff. Americans pay. So, anyway, just wanted to bring that to your attention as if you needed more reasons to assume that everything that Trump says on the campaign trail basically is a lie, which it is. Pretty much everything. All right, what do I want to do? We've covered all the topics I listed. We've gone for an hour, which I think is good for now. Yeah, I think that's good. I think we'll leave that, and we'll go to Super Chat questions. Let me just say again, these shows are funded with contributions from you guys. I cannot do these shows without those contributions. So thank you to all of those who contribute monthly using Patreon or PayPal. Some of you still use Subscribestar. Even a few of you use Locals. I'd appreciate if everybody moved to Patreon or PayPal. That would be great. But those of you who do not want to move and staying where you're staying, that's fine. But those of you who can move, it would be great if you moved. I also ask for those of you who contribute on a monthly basis, if anybody out there among you can afford and sees value in upping your monthly contribution, I'd appreciate that, particularly those of you who can afford to bump it up to, I don't know, $250 or $500 a month. That would be great. $6,000 a year for as many shows as I do and as much content as you get and as much news as you get. For those of you who can afford it, I don't think it's that much money. I'd very much appreciate it. It would make everything much smoother on the show and easier to grow and invest in the show. But the Super Chat, some of you are here live, and I rely on the Super Chat for about 50% almost 50% of the monthly income from the show. And so I'm just asking you to try to, those of you who are there and can support the show and can afford to support the show and see value in supporting the show, please do so. Again, you can do it at $1, $2, $5, $10, $500. If you don't want to ask a question, you can use a sticker or you can buy somebody a membership. All of that is great, so please consider supporting the show in one of those ways. And as soon as I say that, people drop off. But please, even those of you who can only do $1 or $2, just do a sticker like Alex just did. He did it for 9 shekel, which is about $2, $2 to $3. Mary Aline just did one, so $3 is a nice number. If everybody did $3, it's a cappuccino or something like that at Starbucks. Let me just thank anonymous user for his sticker, and Jeremy and Mike and no one and Enric. I even thank no one. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And Alex and Mary Aline. So thank you guys for the support. Really appreciate it, but we really do need to do better than what we're doing so far today. All right, let's jump to the questions. I'll start with Remo. Thoughts on the backstabbers that voted against Elon Musk pay package? I'll continue. Don't you think that the structure of Elon Musk pay package was amazing to maximize shareholder wealth, and now voiding it would be bad for future CEO compensation packages in regard to shareholder wealth maximization? Well, I'm not convinced of that, Remo. I like the structure. I like the fact that he got shares. I like the fact that he got a lot of shares. But I'm dubious about just the sheer size of the pay package. If I was a shareholder of Tesla and seen my stock erode by a significant amount over the last year and stuff, I probably would have voted against it. The pay package seems to me to be unusually, I've never seen a pay package like this. Nobody has ever received anything close to this, even as a percentage of, shares. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't have base pay. For years, he got $1 a year. That was his pay. I think other CEOs have got $1 a year as pay. Nobody has ever come anywhere close to this pay package. I mean, $56 billion. I mean, it just seems outrageous. And the judge ruled that it was the board had approved it without due consultation. Now shareholders have voted it, so he should get it, right? If shareholders want to pay him this, that's fine. But I would not raise this up as a model of pay packages. The size here is reflective, in my view, of the hype surrounding Elon Musk rather than economic factors. Now, if you add to that fact the reality that Tesla is going to face, dramatic challenges from Chinese electric car manufacturers going into the future, and this is a pay package on the past, but that the future is unbelievably uncertain, and just like the stock price of Tesla, which is hyped based on, in my view, based on Elon Musk, I would never buy Tesla. I just don't see it. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have got $5 billion or $10 billion or something amazing, but I don't know, 56 just strikes me as ridiculous. Now, one wonders again how much of the support that people have for Elon Musk's pay package has to do with politics and how much of it has to do with their respect for corporate. And I'm not saying you're like this, Remo, at all, because I know you're not, but some people. If this was some successful woke CEO, as they happen to be quite a few of those, and he got a pay package this big, would people be as excited? I think that this is fine. Again, shareholders could pay him whatever they want to pay him, but I don't think this is reasonable, given the challenges Tesla faces, the fact that Elon Musk, as CEO, maybe devotes half his time to Tesla and maybe less than that, given that he runs X and given that he devotes significant time to SpaceX. How much of his time is devoted to Tesla? So I just don't, I'm not excited about this. I'm not excited about this kind of pay package. Again, shareholders can do what they want, and they have a right to do it. They're paying for it, not me. And Elon Musk is phenomenal at multitasking, but there is a limit. And the reality is that Tesla's share price has not done well over the last, few years. And the Tesla faces this massive competition from the Chinese, and without Chinese cooperation with Elon Musk is in trouble. That's why he flew to China not that long ago. And Biden just passed a 100% tariff, basically to save Elon Musk's butt, because China was going to bring in cars into the United States that are just as good as Tesla's, but significantly less than 50% of the price of a Tesla. And the fact that Tesla wouldn't exist without government subsidies and all of that. Tesla is not a company I get excited about for all those reasons. And his pay package is not a pay package I can get excited about, given all of that, given how much he has to suck up to Chinese, how much he has to rely on government help, and how much and how little time he spends on this one company, and just the size of the pay package. Thank you, Remo. Appreciate the support. John, perhaps the West should let it slip that Putin is seeking a safe haven outside of Russia. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the Russians would believe anything coming out of the West. So it doesn't. It just reminds me that I just watched a really good TV show. I really enjoyed it. It's called Tokyo. God, it just slipped my mind. I think it's called Tokyo Vice, which is 2 seasons on Max. Follows based on a true story. It's probably loosely based on a true story of an American who goes to Japan to study and lands up becoming the first foreigner to be hired by a major Japanese. It's not Michael Mann. It's not a Michael Mann series, but it's loosely based on the true story. Anyway, this American who goes to Japan becomes the first foreign journalist at a Japanese major newspaper, and lands up investigating the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and all the relationships. And I liked it a lot. Very much character-driven, very focused on characters. Unfortunately, it's only 2 seasons. They're not going to extend it by a third, but the ending of the 2nd season is very satisfying. So they wrap up most of the circles. Most of the issues are wrapped up at the end of the 2nd season. So if they're going to end it, this is a good time to end it. Very well acted, very well done, very well made, and really interesting in terms of the just this plot line. Jury says Michael Mann is the executive producer. Oh, okay. I didn't notice, but anyway, Tokyo Vice, good show, highly recommend. Anyway, it reminded me of that because I won't tell you the ending, but the ending is about, in a sense, letting it slip that somebody did something that other people wouldn't like and them taking care of it. So, all right, Daniel says, in what way do you think the planned Ayn Rand Center in Austin will facilitate the mission of spreading objectivism? I think in a number of ways. I think one, I think it'll raise the profile of Ayn Rand, her name recognition, not just in Austin, although in the long run, primarily in Austin, but also I think on a national scale. I think it'll be a building. There will be an architectural statement. I think it'll make national news. I think it'll just raise Ayn Rand. And why is somebody building an Ayn Rand Center? Why is this amazing building being built? What's going on here? Who is she? What is she? So those kind of questions I think are going to come up and percolate to the top and encourage people to engage with Ayn Rand. I think the other, so I think that's one kind of a PR, it's a PR thing. And in that sense, it's really important that the building be a statement building, an impressive building that makes a statement. I also think that that having a physical presence and ultimately a physical campus will make it possible to engage with students at a deeper, more fundamental level. That is, I love teaching classes by Zoom, but it's never quite the same. And I can imagine one day having students there for a summer, for a summer program, an active summer program, not just OCON, but basically the whole summer students where they take classes and maybe they do a little bit of work and stuff like that, and having a physical location and interacting with these students and incredibly powerful. And maybe even a year-long program where you encourage students in a gap year between their high school and their college to come there and enroll. Who knows? But it could be that Ayn Rand University one day will get accredited, and then maybe it could be a hybrid program where you can take classes live, and you could also take them so it becomes a home, a facility that we can use in a variety of different ways to facilitate education around Ayn Rand's ideas and around Ayn Rand's philosophy, live in person with people there, which I think is incredibly valuable and incredibly important. It will also be an event space. So I envision this being a place where this will affect the Austin community, where there are regular events. I can see 3 times a week something going on there. A movie. I can see a series of movie nights, maybe one a week, one every 2 weeks on a regular basis. You could imagine having lectures, debates, study groups, even plays. We will have space there, at least for anywhere between 100 to 200, maybe 300 people to be able to seat there for lectures, events, celebratory dinners, and other things. It will also serve as a museum, which will attract people from afar. So it'll be an inspiration, I think, for all of us, for those of you who are interested in objectivism, inspired by objectivism, to come and engage with Ayn Rand and engage with her ideas. It will be a place to a focal point for all of us. And I think people have often asked me for something like that. It will be beautiful, it'll be inspiring, and it'll be interesting. You'll go there for exhibits about Ayn Rand's life. You'll go there for art exhibits inspired by Ayn Rand. You'll go there for all kinds of things that have to do with Ayn Rand. And you can imagine OCON being always in Austin, and this facility being part of the celebrations around OCON. So I think those are the ways in which it will facilitate the spreading of objectivism. I think a big part of it is the inspiring objectivists. The more we inspire objectivists, the more energy you have around objectivism, the more excitement you have around objectivism, the better you will be at helping us spread these ideas. And I'll also add that a lot of the money going into this building is money we would not collect otherwise. So a lot of people value this and are willing to give us money for this that otherwise would not. So, we've already raised around $30 million. We plan on raising another $20 million for this. And, I think that this will be an exciting place. That, for example, there'll be a studio in this place with nice facilities for podcasting, for, a video facility for people to do podcasts and videos and stuff like that. There'll be a room for editors and people who edit that kind of work. It just gives us a facility that we can then find a variety of different ways to use and utilize in order to expand our programs and bring these ideas to a bigger and bigger audience. There will be no ping pong tables. Andrew says, the fight suffers from the malevolent universe premise, partly because of its frustration over the left's dominance. Does the left also suffer from malevolence? And if so, what is common to both sides' dark worldview? The right suffers, not the fight, the right suffers. I mean, what's common to them, definitely a malevolence, definitely a dark view of human nature, a dark view of man. But, the commonality between the two is much more than that, right? The source is the same. The source is a rejection of reason, a rejection of individual self-interest, and it's a consequence of rejection of capitalism. So the right and the left reject reason, reject egoism, and reject capitalism, even in their, call them soft forms, as practiced in America from its founding. And there's a consequence. If you reject those things, you have to view the world as dark, because if we are not the rational animal, as reason is not efficacious, then we have no guide. We have no guide to action. We have no guide in the world. We have no way in which to judge the world, to act in the world, to move in the world. We just don't have it. And therefore, we're kind of impotent. And as impotent being, that's scary. And that leads you to have a negative view of the world. So, yes, they're both malevolent because they both have a negative view of man. Stephen, a $50 question. Thank you, Stephen. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for keeping us informed on technical issues you're on. We're watching the videos, whether live or not. Love you, buddy. Stephen Porter, really appreciate that. That's $50. So we're still only halfway to the goal for the show for today. So those of you who are watching now, we've got close to 130 people. It wouldn't take much of each one of you to do a small sticker and help us get to our goal. If any of you are inclined to do $100 or $50 like Stephen, that would be amazing, and that will help us get to the goal much faster, or even get to it, because I'm not sure we're going to get to it this show. Okay, Stephen Opp had a question from Saturday's show that he snuck in there just after I had shut the show down. So Stephen, I'm sorry I didn't get to it on Saturday, but I saved the question, so let me take it now. So this relates to the fact that Trump did propose in one of his interviews to give green cards to college graduates. He made it pretty broad in the statement that he made. He also said this would include people who get 2-year degrees. That's pretty broad. The majority of degrees earn not just 4-year bachelor degrees. So any foreign student who came in to get an education would get a green card. And I was going to say, wow, that is the best thing I've heard from Trump ever. And then, of course, just a couple of hours later, 2-3 hours later, after people on the right basically flipped out and criticized this and really were upset by this, the spokesman for the Trump campaign issued a clarification. And the clarification was, well, I mean, these people would have to go through a very, 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 very rigorous process of vetting. And they would only get a green card if they were in professions that did not, part of the vetting was whether them getting a green card would have a negative impact on the wages of Americans. And in other words, oh my God. So it was a major backtracking on that, which is not surprising. Trump basically is very good at floating trial balloons. Most politicians are. Trump is just a master at this. He floats it out there and he sees what the response is. And based on what he sees, he decides whether it is something to add to his portfolio of stuff that he promotes or not. And that basically dictates, whether he does or he doesn't. So this is one where he floated. The response was overwhelmingly negative. And I don't think you'll hear much about this in the future, even though it probably came from some of his buddies who are associated with the Wall Street Journal. As I said a while ago, I can't remember how many years ago, this was something that was a Wall Street Journal was pushing. I was pushing. This is very early in the podcast. I pushed for this. A green card, stamp a green card to every graduating foreign student, particularly in the STEMs. But it's not something Trump really believes. It's something he's trying out to see what reaction it'll get, and based on that, he'll decide whether to go with it or not. Sadly, I wish it was something. All right, Mary Aline, thank you. These are people who took my request for stickers seriously. John, thank you. Mike, thank you. So, yeah, so we only need $200 now. So we're getting closer, inching towards the goal. But we don't have that many Super Chat questions to go. So it'll either happen soon or won't. Richard said, what red wine were you pouring at the OCON gala? We had done a dinner at a private room at a restaurant, and they had a minimum. And after we ordered all the food, we had not reached the minimum. And therefore, the restaurant just gave us a few bottles of very expensive wine to take, to fill in with a minimum. I don't remember the names of all the bottles, but one of them was a Camus Special Reserve Cabernet, exceptional Cabernet, expensive bottle of wine, and it was a Camus. I can't remember. There were 3 others. We got 4 bottles overall. I can't remember what they were, but I tasted one other one, and it was... I liked it more than the Camus, but unfortunately I don't remember the name. That's what happens to me. Don't remember. All right. We got another $20 question from Mark. Mark says, the land sales that have taken place at synagogues in Canada and the U.S., most recently in L.A., have attracted violent protesters. Is there anything illegal or immoral about those land sales? I don't know anything about this, Mark. So I am copying, pasting, and I'll do a little bit of research into it and get back to you. So, so I'll leave that question up there and try to figure it out for next time, and I'll answer it next time because I don't know. Yeah, missed that one. All right, Philosophy at Work is again using the super chat to exchange messages with, I guess, his girlfriend maribbens. He says, I'm sure there are plenty of things to like about capitalism, but what about a door? So, you know, one day, I mean, maybe they're really Russian spies, and this is a way for them to communicate secrets to the Russians, or maybe they're, who knows? It's completely unintelligible to me, but that's the way it's supposed to be. It's in secret code, lover's secret code, nonetheless. Right? No one says Germany was recently really clever when it made it illegal for companies to own both power stations and transmission lines, wasn't it? I think that the illegality to own both is pretty much everywhere. I think that's true in the United States. Maybe not. But it's true in many countries. So the split, it's an attempt to not have monopolies or whatever. So this split between power lines and transmission lines is pretty common around the world. And as all restrictions by government, it lands up to have unintended consequences, which are pretty bad. Scott says, his usual snarky question, why is New York governor backing a subway mask ban? Haven't we been told that noticing increasing crime versus all the data is mainly anti-Biden tribalism? Because it is anti-Biden tribalism. I've been quoting murder rates. Murder rates are not underreported. Violent crime is not underreported because the police don't want to execute on it, particularly murder. But violent crime generally is not underreported, but again, particularly murder rates. The reality is that, violent crime, particularly murder, is down. It's down across the board in the United States. Yes, there are a few cities in which it's up, but mostly it is down. Now, you can ignore that fact. You can pretend it's not happening. You can stick your head in the sand, as Scott does frequently. You can ignore the data because the data, when it's inconvenient to you, is always being manipulated. The data that supports your case is always just right. But you can look at multiple sources of data. The FBI is one, but you can also look at local police station data that is aggregated by some services. And what you'll find is that murder rates in the United States last year and this year are down, and this year they're down to the levels almost of pre-COVID. During COVID, when murder rates were up, I said murder rates were up dramatically in 2020 and then in 2021. But since 2022, they're down. It's just fact. Now, they're inconvenient for you. That's okay. Now, it is true that because of the fact that the Attorney General, who I've criticized over and over again, of Manhattan, who does not believe in prosecuting for minor criminal acts, because he's so lax in enforcement, it is true that the subways in New York have become more and more unpleasant. Not because people are murdered in the subway in New York. People are not, or at least not any more than they used to be. Not because people are being, assaulted, violently assaulted. I'm sure they are, but not more than used to be. But because they're being harassed, and because the police are not doing what they should be doing about it. So, and that's not because of Biden. It has nothing to do with Biden, but it has everything to do with Bragg, who is awful, and I said when he was elected to the post, God, I said when he was elected to the post how bad he was and how bad he was going to be. Bragg is awful. And it's the same as there's a huge increase in shoplifting. There is. I've never denied that. But there is a decline in murder. And while I'm willing to acknowledge what is increasing and what is decreasing, some people out there only want to see the storm clouds, only want to see the darkness, only want to see the negative. because that is the way they're wired. They're wired to be political cronies, political, rebroadcasters of the dogma of the authorities. This is the mentality that leads us to authoritarianism, and this is exactly what people like Scott, to name just one, engage in. All right, Frank, at OCON Poker, did anyone get a straight flush? I don't know. At my table, nobody got a straight flush. Apollo Zeus, who is the most impressive non-objectivist you have met in the intellectual sense? You mean in person, man? I don't know. I used to really, really like Daniel Pipes, although he got captured by the Trumpists, unfortunately, but and by the kind of right-wing, hysteria of the late 20-teens. But he was very, very good after 9/11, and he'll always get a lot of credit from me for that. And he's good on Israel. He's still very good on Israel, although again he got a little soft in the last few years. Unfortunately had to have October 7th to wake him up. I mean, Douglas Murray is very impressive. I disagree with him on quite a few things, particularly the role of religion in Western civilization. I think that's the biggest one, and the threat of it. So he's impressive. Matt Ridley is impressive. Again, disagree with him on a bunch of stuff, particularly on the role of individuals in history. He believes that extraordinary individuals. Yeah, Ayn was impressive, pre-Christian days. Steven Pinker, although I don't think I've ever met him in person. I've been at an event with him via Zoom, digitally. David Deutsch is another one who's very impressive on some things, and I disagree with him dramatically in others. John Stossel. John Stossel's not really an intellectual. He's good, but he's not an intellectual. Anyway, those are the best I can think of. Cook, got my pass for OCON next year. See you in Boston. Yeah, so I have to remind all of you that Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show, and as part of that sponsorship, I need to remind you that today is the last day to get a 50% discount on OCON 2025. OCON 2025, just search. You can go to, aynrand.org/start here. And I'm sure there's a link there to the 50% discount. Today it ends for OCON 2025 in Boston, July 1st, I think the 5th. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting. You should definitely come. There was one other thing I was supposed to remind you with regard to the Ayn Rand Institute, but it is totally, absolutely, unequivocally slipped my mind. So I will have it ready for tomorrow, for the sponsorship talk tomorrow. Daniel asks, how much to review a symphony? God, it depends if I know the symphony or not. If it's a 19th century symphony, I don't know. But again, God, how do I review a symphony? I don't know enough to review a symphony. I mean, it's one thing for me to review a song. I can wing it, but I can't really review a symphony. I don't know enough about music. I don't know enough about music theory. I don't know enough about the language of music, how to talk about music, how to describe music. And again, I can get away with it for a song because it's short and simple and easy, but I can't get away. So I'm going to say I can't do it. So no amount. I'm just not going to review a symphony. I can tell you my favorite symphonies now. I can tell you which symphonies I enjoy. But to actually review one would require me to make stuff up. And I'm just not, it would be irresponsible of me. All right. We chipped away at the goal, but haven't quite made it. Okay, I want to remind you all that Alex Epstein is also a sponsor. You can go to alexepstein.substack.com. You will get the best information about energy, his talking points about energy. Robert Bryce, who will be on my show tonight at 7. A big fan of Alex's. Alex is a big fan of Robert's. They share, broadly speaking, a philosophy around energy. Robert Weiss is particularly good on nuclear energy. We'll talk to him about that. So if you're interested in any of these things, at 7 p.m. East Coast time, we will be doing that. Let's see. Andrew. And, of course, you can ask more Super Chat questions of Robert Weiss and myself during that. Andrew says, another thought on both left and right malevolent worldview. Both are struggling to control over others. The light of freedom is not the goal. That struggle is political control of a dark mission. Yes. And you have to control others because others are unpredictable. They're not to be trusted. Again, it's the dark view. Both right and left share a version of Plato's Philosopher Kings. They both share this idea that you need to have some kind of authoritarians to dictate the world, because if you leave it to individuals, they will completely screw it up. They completely mess it up. It'll be a complete and utter disaster. Human beings are inherently, bad or ineffective at taking care of themselves, so they need something superior to take care of them, and that is the Philosopher King in version of left or right. All right, we are basically done. Jennifer says, thank you for everything, Yaron. Really, really appreciate that, Jennifer. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks to all the Super Chatters. I appreciate it. I will see you all at 7 p.m. tonight. And, of course, tomorrow we'll be back on a regular schedule at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for our regular show. So thanks, everybody. See you all tonight, 7 p.m. Don't forget. And, if you're watching this after the fact, then on YouTube you can do an applause, contribute some money. And for those of you who are not on YouTube, please consider becoming a supporter of the Yaron Brook Show on Patreon, on PayPal, yaronbrookshow.com/membership. By the way, there'll be a new website launching soon, I hope. I think it's almost done, much nicer than the existing one. It'll be cool, so hopefully you'll partake in that as well. But for now, please support the show, yaronbrookshow.com/membership, or just Patreon, Yaron Brook Show, and you can do it there. So thank you, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye.